We have a host of presentations today in regards to the not-for-profit business grant program. So we thank you all for joining us tonight to present on your not-for-profit and some of the work that you're doing. We're very excited and proud to be able to have some funds allocated and dedicated to all of the incredible work that you guys do. So we also want to hear about it and we want to share it. So with that, we'll have you guys come on up. You're welcome to pick some chairs when we call you up, and talk a little bit about the application that you have. And I don't know, Tim or Crystal, do you have anything you want to say before we start?
Sure. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on out tonight. This is our second round of nonprofit applications, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kristen McMahon and Tina Downey of Robert H. Jackson Center to share their presentation.
Come on up, guys. Got two great seats for you right there. Call them the hot seats.
No, oh, sorry.
Any seats.
So that's fine. We provided you all with a presentation that we had made to some foundations and some funders for the two projects that we have before you. One is related to renovations of our theater, and the other is to support some personnel growth at the Jackson Center. So I will take these two probably in the inverse order. So the personnel, as I keep telling my board, we have maxed out what I can do as a generalist. And so now in terms of really wanting to elevate the programs that we offer and the educational offerings that we have, we need someone with specific background in this. Let me take a step back. So during COVID, obviously we shuttered as everyone else did and reopened in July when the Phase 4 organizations were able to reopen. We have really spent the last almost 3 years, I guess at this point, rebooting some of the programs because people got out of the habit of using the Jackson Center educational resources, coming to the Jackson Center for programs. Teachers, for year one was really about survival mode. For year two, it was about helping the students catch up. And so we are working starting with Kevin Whitaker and Tina Sandstrom on how do we reboot the educational offerings that the teachers had used for more than a decade of our work, and also working with them on how do we get into the schools in case that is a more convenient way for teachers and students to use our resources. This person who is dedicated to programs in education would be a key component of that to ensure that our education offerings are the best that we can provide. So Robert H. Jackson is required to be taught in New York State, and we should be the first place that people come to for resources, especially locally, and we want to make sure that that is the case. The second personnel in the application is a director of communications and marketing. So we have done a very good job of publicizing what we do, but we could also do it better, we could do it deeper, and we could do it to a more diverse audience. And so with someone who is specifically focused on communications and marketing to help us get the word out about what we do and how we do it. I personally really love that since COVID, we have been a gathering place for the community. So we are now an early voting site. The first meeting of the Human Rights Commission was in our banquet room. We host a number of community gatherings, whether it is weddings and family reunions to teacher in-service days, and so people are really using the building more fulsomely than I think they probably have in the past. And that's something, one, we want to make sure that they are aware that that is an opportunity for them, but also that we are communicating more strongly about the programs and events that we offer for students, for teachers, for adults, both in person and virtually. Anything I forgot?
I was just going to mention most recently when we had, was 2 years ago, the International Humanitarian Law Welcome event. We had international prosecutors come into our facility and we welcomed them, and we had an artistic performance by Sir Anya Berman. And that was sort of a really great prompt for us to be thinking about our theater space differently, and how can we be a greater resource for the community, and how can we better partner with artistic groups. She wanted to do some dancing, this great Indian dance for folks, and we struggled a little bit because we have carpeting down there in the theater. Which is hard to dance on carpeting. So it was a bit of a challenge, and she had to do it solo versus having multiple dancers in there. So that was sort of an eye-opening moment for us in terms of the theater and how we can be better partners with other artists in the community too.
We want to continue on to the second part of the application, which was the theater renovation side of it. Our audiovisual system was designed approximately 20 years ago, and it was cobbled together in a variety of ways on a shoestring budget. There is exactly one person at this point who knows how to run any of it. That is Ed Tomasini, and he is a gift from the heavens, because we could not do a lot of what we do without him. So we need, one, to make it more efficient, energy efficient, eco-efficient, and two, it would really be nice to create a system that is holistic and able to be used, I use myself, by any idiot who can go in there and just understand what buttons they need to push and have things run as it is for when Ed sadly retires from us, which at some point will happen. So the theater has been the focal point for most of our programs for the entire lifespan of the Jackson Center, and it needs some love now. It is at a point in its existence where it could function better for this community if changes were made to it, both from a structural perspective but also from a behind the scenes perspective. And so that is the highlights of our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
I do have one question. Are you, in terms of the types of visitors are you seeing more local, or are you seeing farther out in a driving range? Just curious about that.
I would say that we have a good balance of both. So we certainly have a number of students and teachers who utilize our building. We've actually had a number of community members very intentionally use our building for programs to introduce their friends to the Jackson Center as well. And we do certainly draw in people who have come to Jamestown, sometimes specifically to visit the Jackson Center, sometimes to visit the Comedy Center or visit our TPI, and then they come to us as something else to do in town, and so we really do see both. I think that the community adoption of our space certainly over the last 3 years has increased, which I'm gratified to see, and I have been very open about the fact that I want the community to see themselves in this building. And so we're also thinking through, creating Spanish translations of our exhibit materials and things like that, so it becomes a more welcoming space and a space that is more easily accessible. All right. Thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And next, moving into the National Comedy Center, I'd like to invite Ms. Rochelle Moll.
We're both going to.
Still anyone that's speaking.
This is Rochelle Mollet. She is our CFOO. And I'm Journey Gunderson. I'm the Executive Director of the National Comedy Center. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm going to keep it pretty high level in terms of summarizing why I think the application that we submitted is worthy of support. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So in summary, we requested $200,000 of a total project magnitude of $400,000. This is intended to help the National Comedy Center organization rebound from the hit it took during COVID, the hit from the pandemic. And the way we intend to use the money is to bring more money into Jamestown. And I don't mean just into our accounts, I mean into the community of Jamestown. So I'm going to explain a little about how that works. In terms of the loss and the hit that was taken, it's no mystery that there was a 16-week mandated closure by New York State. Well, those were 16 weeks of our high season, and we know this is a very seasonal climate for tourism. So to close during those crucial 16 weeks in 2020 it decimated our revenue. It also led to 2 years of canceling the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival, which brings in 15,000 people from always more than 40 of the 50 US states. So our ticket buyer zip codes are more than 40 US states represented every year. Think about the hotels, think about the Airbnbs, think about the restaurants. Those people aren't getting groceries and cooking in kitchens most of the time. In terms of the loss, I also don't need to tell anyone in this room that that is ongoing. 2022, by industry-wide tourism projections, was supposed to be the year that went back to 2019 levels of pre-pandemic levels of tourism. Ask anyone in the industry, that didn't happen. And part of that is the variance that came out. You know, when those projections were done at the beginning of the year, we were all optimistic about 2022, and there were a series of variants. So whether it's Corning Museum of Glass, because we talked to our associates in the industry, or Chautauqua Institution, or I Love New York, we said, how are you guys doing? Is this just us? And everyone was down 16 to 20%. So the hit continues. Things have not fully rebounded. So if you have any more questions about the magnitude of the hit that we took, we're happy to talk about that further. But to talk more about what would happen if you support this project and how would it actually impact the community of Jamestown, to give you a sense of what happens when a dollar goes into the National Comedy Center, in 2022 alone, we put $1.4 million in local wages into the community of Jamestown. So $1.4 million in local wages just in payroll. We also spend money, you know, you think of us as a nonprofit and you think about the operation going on within our walls, but we also spend money with 60 local businesses. So think about what a list of 60 local businesses is in Chautauqua County. This is not a huge metro area. 60 businesses is a lot that we impact by spending those dollars. What dollars are we spending? Most of the dollars we're putting into the pockets of our staff and into the expenses with those 60 local businesses are from the visitors we draw from Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Buffalo, Toronto, although the Canadian border wasn't even reopened until recently. So what we want to do with this relief money is market to those drive markets of ours and ask them to come and infuse the Jamestown community with their dollars. We know this is an impact. There's almost no way that you can figure that marketing to these drive markets isn't going to impact the local Jamestown community, for-profits, non-profits, not just the Comedy Center. And what we know about our visitor spending is this. 88% of our visitors are from outside of Chautauqua County. 85% report being very likely to return. So even if they come once, if we use one of these dollars to attract them once, they're going to go home and tell 100 friends, and they're very likely to return. They spend while they're in town. Visiting parties to the National Comedy Center reported spending an average of $346 while in town. 40% of our visitors spend the night. 77, I think this is probably most key when you think about the local businesses, 77% of our visitors ate at a local restaurant, an average of 2.6 meals. So when you think about the rebound and supporting the National Comedy Center, think of it as a machine that if you put gas in its tank, it will enrich the coffers of everyone in Jamestown and be a rising tide that lifts all boats. Other impacts of the National Comedy, and if you don't believe me, ask Sammy at the pub, ask Crown Street, ask Patty Sentai at Landmark, who catered last night an event of 150 people at the National Comedy Center. And we all know in this community, catering an event of 150 people, you depend on a few of those each year to get through. That was actually, we hosted the Pennsylvania Bus Association, but it's people from New Jersey, it's people from DC, most of whom had never been here. They're also seeing the rest of the area and deciding to come back with family. In terms of other impacts, briefly I want to cover a little known thing, which is our internship program. So we all know that in terms of economic prosperity, college towns have it made, right? Because they have this influx of kids at large universities like Ithaca has Cornell and Ithaca College. Then their families come visit, or they're spending their parents' money. Whatever it is, that's how the community is sustained. On a microcosm level, in Jamestown's little downtown, the fact that we have 10 to 15 interns who come and stay in Jamestown for the summer, invite their families to come visit, They're also most of the time not cooking. They're buying coffee at Crown Street. They're hanging out there all day. They're spending that money on food and socializing. They're going to the local bars. Even that is a microcosm of what we represent in terms of bringing dollars in. Now let's talk a little bit more about the cultural impact and the quality of life. So the internship program, we just pulled this data and it was actually really pleasing even for me to see. We had never put it in one place until this application. Our interns have often come from Jamestown Business College. In fact, 6 of our full-time staff, including at the VP level, came from our internship program. The one at the VP level started at Jamestown Business College. So talk about a guy we were able to keep. The interns come from Jamestown Community College, but we also bring students here from other schools. And so again, this is the economic impact. These are the kids filling the cafes and restaurants and bars downtown. The University of Buffalo SUNY system, San Diego State, Arizona State, Kent State, Purdue, University of Chicago, Ithaca College, Penn State, University of Southern California, and Syracuse, just in the last 3 years. Where those interns have been placed. So now, the interns who have come through Jamestown, spent a summer here, whether they're local kids or someone who came and lived for 3 months, have gone on to placements at The Daily Show, the White House Historical Association in terms of the archival experience they get here, Lucas Films, George Lucas, Creative Artists Agency, ICM Partners, TEDx, William Morris Entertainment, and Uncabaret. One really great local success story. There was a young woman whose name I won't share because I didn't have her permission and should have asked her, but if you want to know more about her, I can connect you right to her. So this is a young woman who came to the National Comedy Center on a Jamestown High School field trip, didn't even know she was interested in comedy, decided from there she was sort of hooked on the subject matter, met Wayne Fetterman, who's a professor at USC, who, if you watched the PBS special honoring the Mark Twain Prize honoring Adam Sandler, he was sitting right next to him. She went and studied with him and got into USC's Comedy Studies program. So from Jamestown High School, field trip at the Comedy Center, met Wayne Fetterman, the professor there, got into their program, came back, interned for us, then went and interned at Saturday Night Live, and now is working as a comedy writer. And we've only been open for 5 years. So if that's just one example of the impact that we make that's cultural and not purely economic, I hope that inspires you to support this thing growing and continuing in Jamestown. I also want to sort of wrap our presentation by talking a little bit about equity and accessibility. So many people aren't even aware of what our admission price is. So the admission price to the National Comedy Center is now $33.50. The admission price, if you are a Chautauqua County resident, is $19.50. So it's quite a big delta between what locals and tourists are charged. We try to remain accessible. We also participate in the Museums for All program, which means that if you are a family that qualifies under low income standards for food stamp assistance and public assistance, you come in for, what did we name this at, $2? $2
a person, up to 4 per benefit card.
70% of our full-time equivalents come from the Jamestown, as we all know, economically depressed community. And we have, in 2023, decided to make the museum free to all kids and teens. So kids and teens can now walk into the National Comedy Center without paying an admission. We do require that they are accompanied by a paying adult, only because of the responsibility that would mean if we were, looking after everybody. But we try to be as accessible as possible to this community. We try to make sure that we are the economic juggernaut that we set out to be, and we're a nonprofit, so every dollar put in goes right back into doing more of this. And Rochelle, what have we
I
left
think you
out?
hit it off.
She stole it all here. She stole your thunder.
No, I'm sorry,
It's okay. That's what she's for.
She prepared me with the thunder. She's like, here's the data.
And Rochelle, thanks for managing the money.
Thank
She really is. She's humble, but she's the reason we're here. I won't go on and on, but there were 19 different funding sources that went into building this thing, from local donors in the community to state and federal dollars, and it is a bee's nest of fulfillment requirements to now make sure that we are using every dollar correctly and have done so ever since we were participants in the New Market Tax Credits program because this is an economically depressed community. So we ask that you consider supporting us and putting more gas in the tank because it will be the rising tide that lifts many more boats than ours.
Can we vote? I'm kidding.
Just a question for you guys. Can you tell us how are you guys still participating in the Laugh Safe program, or how are the restrictions for the comedy center? Are people still trying to participate in that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that and applaud Rochelle. So what Mayor Sundquist is referring to is a program our health and safety program was called Laugh Safe. We won some awards for it. It was hard to revamp the most interactive museum in the world for the COVID era. And what we did was stay in tune with exactly what was happening in the climate throughout the many years of really dealing with that issue, from social distancing and closing stations so that people couldn't stand within 6 feet, to using a stylus instead of touch, to all of the expenses of PPE that were incredible, to the extra cleaning supplies and labor. It's been a heavy lift, and that is part of the loss or part of the expense of the pandemic. It's not just the loss in revenue, but the expenses required to operate a museum. We've kept some of those protocols because they're healthier. You know, it was something where we learned a lot, and we kept the reservation system that helps our attendance stay more continuous throughout the day, which I think helps everybody.
Yes.
I think that what am I leaving out? Anything that?
No, I think the cleaning protocol, still everybody truly appreciates that. Some of the other items, the stylus and, we also had a board that we would put the wristbands on. I think you saw it, so we would let go of that too. But no, I think there's some protocols I think that will stay around for a while. Absolutely. And one thing I do want to, even with Elastic, that was such an amazing plan and the amount of time. Like when we say we closed in March of 17, and we reopened on July 3rd, which Cuomo didn't open everything until July 1st, and our team had this all ready to go into place. So that was really accolades to them.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I did realize the last thing I wanted to address. There was a thing in our scoring that said that we hadn't been around long enough to make a determination, and a lot of people don't know that, but we actually were incorporated in 2001. It's the same organization. So if there's any question about the longevity of the company, we did incorporate in 2001, not when the National Comedy Center opened in 2018. If that helps, that was a key scoring criteria we thought we should make sure it's accurate.
I'm glad you recognize that children spend their parents' money at college.
Yeah.
And you didn't start with a joke. See, that was fine.
We also did start paying interns to make sure the program itself is accessible.
Good.
We didn't want the internship program to only be accessible to people who can afford to live on their parents' dime. So now our interns, our program can be more accessible because they're earning wages while they're working.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to move into Roger Tory Peterson Institute, and I would like to welcome Mr. Arthur Pearson to speak to us.
We'll do the other side of the table.
Any table you
All
want,
right.
any part of the table.
Well, thank you. And so my wife and I are from Chicago, and a big part of the reason we accepted the position here, because Jamestown is not quite as big as Chicago, but you have such an exceptional concentration of genius. So the Robert H. Jackson Center, Lucy Desi, Roger Tory Peterson, there's many other entities too, but everyone likes to boast the hometown heroes. But these are hometown heroes that are legitimately of national and international significance. And I think even more impressive that this community is already significantly invested in the institutions to celebrate these legacies. Not just looking backward, like look at the things they did way back when, but really moving forward and setting the stage for internships, moving forward, educating youth, etc. It's really quite impressive. I think if RTPI had been here just on its own, I'm not sure it would have been nearly as attractive, but to have these three institutions and such extraordinary partners is like, yes please, I think that's an opportunity we would like to do. So, I began on March 16th, 2020.
Hey, same. Just a little bit before.
Pretty much.
So my first official action on my first official day was to close the museum. And you know, back then we really didn't know what was going to happen, how long this was going to last. And the first question the board asked me as the newbie, the museum's closed, so what do we do with staff? So I convinced the board that the staff is the #1 asset. And especially coming into an entity where we're trying to figure out, and I was hired with the charge of really reinvigorating an organization that had an interesting history, but had some challenges, and really needed to go to a new level, and that was not going to happen without staff. And that represents about 65 to 75% of our total costs, which is a big lift. So I convinced the board that we were not going to move forward unless we kept staff on board. So as we all know, we were closed for 4 months. Even when we reopened, the world had pretty much shut down. So revenues plummeted, and like you know, we talked to all our peers, and we study all the national information. Museums got absolute hammered. And we did not lay off a single person, we didn't furlough anybody, so the money went this way and expenses stayed here. So we really got kicked in the teeth. And just to make things interesting, the first time that Mr. Mayor and I met was on December, a day that will live in infamy, when there was an electric fire at RTPI and closed this for an additional 6 months.
When water was pouring out of your building.
Yes, it was. So the good news, we didn't lose a thing in the collection, but again, closing us down for this. So that was on top of COVID. So we really got off to a very difficult, challenging start. But just COVID specific, we got kicked in the teeth to the tune of $500,000. That was the expense that we incurred. The good news is, though, is that the investment actually paid off. And that's what's important to know. So, again, studying all the figures, many museums have closed permanently as a result of COVID. Some are still not reopened. Some are still in the process of hiring and rehiring staff who were furloughed and laid off. Almost everyone is trying to get to those 2019 pre-pandemic levels, okay? We were really excited that with the strength of our new strategic vision, which is, we like to think is pretty bold and dynamic, our attendance level in 21 actually exceeded our pre-pandemic levels by 70%. In the following year, we doubled. So there's something really magical and dynamic about our new strategic vision, which is right out of the box, starting to do exactly what it is that we need them to do. So again, I really appreciate coming after you guys because you set the table so well. It's not about being successful just for us. It really is about driving the cultural economy of Jamestown. That's actually built into our strategic plan. If we're successful for us, that's not nearly good enough. We actually have to drive people to visit, to stay in the hotels, to eat in the restaurants, to spend their dollars here. That is critically important for the health of our community. That's what we're committed to, and that's what we're starting to do. So, we feel that we are significantly on the rebound at this point in time. We have rebuilt the organization soup to nuts in terms of infrastructure, board, staff, the whole 9 yards. There is, though, one critical piece that we're missing, and this is something where, sort of cards on the table, RTPI has never had a legitimate development director in its entire 40-year history. That seems a little astonishing. We've had some really good people who did nice work, but we didn't have someone who could really go out and not just mine our local community for dollars, but to extend beyond Jamestown to attract additional dollars. We have an aspiration, as we did from day one 40 years ago, to be nationally significant. If we don't tap into national dollars, we are not going to be nationally significant, and we're going to not help our community by asking more of a community where those resources are shrinking anyways. So again, we feel we have a moral, ethical obligation to advance our development efforts, to seek funding from outside the community, and we feel the best way to do that is with a high-profile development director. So I think a virtue of this particular grant program is that, in part, it is to help those who really got nailed by COVID. Thank you very much. We qualify, we think, richly or poorly. But we don't want the dollars just to fill a hole from 2 years ago. We really want those dollars to invest in the future. I was really pleased to see in the criteria, and by the way, I spent 25 years in philanthropy in Chicago, and I appreciate the transparency of this process, the criteria that you share, the scoring. This is gold. Most people don't do this. If I was going to give a grant, I'd give it to you guys because this is really, really good. But with this information, we feel that we need to get a high-level development director. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought with that attempted humor. I got to go to the down to work on that. So to invest in the future, that's the big thing we need to do with this development director. Oh, I was saying, we've never had a bona fide development director, and that's a critical missing piece for us. The world of development directors nowadays, to really work at a national level, it's a buyer's market. And so in order to invest in this level, we're gonna have to invest at a significant level. And so the request here is for 82.5 technically, to be in that ballpark for the kind of development director that we feel that we need to move forward. Now getting back to the point I was making, the word that in here appears in several instances, the word resilience. My particular focus in Chicago is working with arts groups, conservation groups, museum groups to help them develop the operational and financial capacity they need to be resilient, to do more than just survive, but to actually thrive. If you're just trying to keep the lights on, if you're just worrying about how you're going to make payroll the next day, you're not likely to be richly successful in fulfilling your mission. You're just trying to survive. In order to thrive, we need to go to that next level to be resilient. Pray that it's not another global pandemic, but something's going to happen. And all nonprofits deal with this. There are good times, but there are ebbs and flows. And the important thing is, in the way that many nonprofits achieve success, is by being prepared for the next bad thing that happens. For us in our determination, we have lots of good infrastructure now in place, but this development piece really is the critical missing piece for us. So that is the request that we have on this. It would be helpful, I can share just a couple of things that we're doing in terms of trying to bring more people to our community. So, like many in the room, we are ambassadors for Jamestown. Last week we hosted the Consul General for Sweden in New York, who was here and came to Roger Troy Peterson Institute because he's arguably one of our most famous Swedes. That's an ambassador role that we play, and we had a lovely time with Ms. Melander. Like you, we celebrated or hosted the bus tour groups today. This past April, we expanded our annual Banff presentation from a midweek presentation to a week presentation. 1 day to 2 days, again, with the express desire to bring more tourism to Jamestown. We doubled our numbers, the restaurants are going crazy, and even Forte Open, that's been closed for a while, they opened the bar just to be able to serve the community, and there was money to be made, and that's important for all of us to do. The exhibition that we're just about to open features artists, big name artists from all over the country. We are bringing that level of culture to Jamestown, and with that comes tourism. So you're asking about where our tourists come from, where our audience comes from. 75% of our audiences come from outside of Jamestown. But because our overall audience base is actually expanding, we're also growing our audience base within Jamestown. But it is important, again, these regional markets, Pittsburgh, Erie, Buffalo, those are our target markets, and those are the folks we want to bring here, and those are the folks who are coming here. And as Journey well articulated, they come, they go home, they're tale their friends. These are early days of our recovery, but already we are seeing exponential returns on the investment. Again, for us, the critical missing piece for us is to rebuild our donor base to help us be more resilient, to be able to do more of this on behalf of the community.
Question, Jim? Just one for me. So, in terms of a national presence, I guess, are you seeing a lot of members? You often get people from the birding community, correct?
We do get a couple birders.
Birders.
Roger's known for birds. Yep.
And are you seeing folks that may not be in that community coming to your institution more?
Yes, well, both. Aspiring to be nationally significant, that's a big lift. Who do you really target? And most marketing efforts are successful when you target. So we do in fact target the birding community. So we have a sponsorship agreement with an organization called Birdwatchers Digest. It's the largest, most successful birding magazine that Roger was super involved in the day. They've got a dedicated mailing list of 40,000. So we sponsor their magazine. We do an article in their monthly online digest. They do a fundraiser for us every year. We are intentional about reaching out to the birding community, get that specific target here. But above and beyond that, we are opening up RTPI in Jamestown to the art world. We are still early days, but this exhibition that we're just about to open, Art That Matters to the Planet, is our signature annual exhibition. And already we are getting people from all over the world contacting us wanting to be a part of this. We are getting on the high-end art market map and becoming known as an epicenter for this particular kind of art. Environmental art, eco art, it's a field that is still in its development, and with an extraordinary curatorial team, we're helping to drive that nationally and internationally, defining what it is, because that's the kind of talent that we're developing, that's the kind of scholarship that we're contributing to the field. So that too is another target market for us. So birders, art lovers, museum goers, those are the folks who are all of a sudden discovering Jamestown is the place to be. And again, when they come here, as the bus folks did today, and then there's that, and there's that, and there's that. That's how cultural tourism works. If it's a one and done, you might be successful to a degree, but when you get to do this and this and this and this and this, that's when a community really has the bones to be super successful on this one.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? All right, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And with that, I would like to invite Mr. Josiah Lynn from Chautauqua Opportunities.
Come on up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. You're the next contestant.
All right. There are too many of our community members in Jamestown who are homeless. And unfortunately, we're seeing that trend expand beyond even 2 years ago. I'm looking at some data that we run through the Chautauqua County Homeless Coalition. 2020, there were 465 individuals who were literally homeless, meaning they were either on the street or living in a shelter. And went up in 2021 to 525, and this past year, 2022, that to 661. So we're seeing a pretty steady increase in the number of people who are homeless in our community, which I think is, many people in the community are well aware of that. At the same time, if you dig into it a little deeper, you'll see that the female population of those who are homeless has increased the most out of anyone. That from 2020, where we had 103 single adult women, we now have 168. So that's a really significant increase. We also don't have the proper shelter for these women. Many of the women who are homeless are placed in a motel, out of town, having to get to their social services appointments, and then have to get to our office where we are trying to provide the best services possible, but we know we can do better. And so 2 years ago, Chautauqua Opportunities started a project that we believe will allow us to better serve the women in our community. And I'm very happy to say that we have a new name for that project. It is the Hope Haven Women's Center, Hope Haven, and we really do hope that this project will provide hope for the women who are coming here. Located in downtown Jamestown, we're taking an old 3-story building and renovating it for up to 18 beds for women who are homeless. And the goal is to work with them for between 30 and 60 days. And then we have many existing programs to help move them on to permanent housing, working with landlords, working with our funders, working with the homeless individuals to help. And so Hope Haven has been a project, as I said, we started in 2020. The city's been supportive with committing some funds even from the very beginning. We were funded from the state in 2022, finally, which was great. Unfortunately, between 2020 and 2022, the cost of construction went up astronomically, even more than we expected. So the money that we had submitted for our grant application originally was not enough. And we had to come back. At that point, we weren't sure we were going to be able to carry through this project, but we were able to come back, and I'm very pleased to say that the community has responded. Many other funders here in Jamestown, the Regional Foundation, the county, the Land Bank have all pledged funds, and the state pitched in some more funds. So we are at this point at 95% of the funds that we need in order to fully fundraise the project. We are moving forward regardless, but we're still trying to help complete the project, at least the capital phase of this project. So we just need that extra 5%, and the money that we're requesting here will get us to 100% of the funds that we are fundraising for. In terms of what the impact will be, I think really it's just better services. You know, at COI, our work is human services. So we're trying to help individuals wherever they are, and if they're homeless, they're in crisis. It's a traumatic situation, and the longer you're in that traumatic situation, the worse it becomes. So having a shelter, we'll be able to work more intensively with the women who are in the shelter. And we found this with our safe house here in Jamestown. We found this with many of other housing. You get to know people better when you're living in the same space as them. And so we'll have a staff there 24/7, not living there, but there 24/7, being able to work with them. It's also centrally located. So instead of having to come all the way from out of town to services in town, it's going to be easy to make those appointments, not get sanctioned, not run into some of the problems that many of our homeless folks run into. And so we think that that will, one, help the length of time homeless, but also the returns to homeless. That if we can reduce the number of times that women are coming back through services, which is too many in many cases, then we're going to be able to make an impact in their life and reduce the trauma. So that's why we're doing it. I think also just in general having more beds for our homeless services is going to be beneficial to the community. We had to do blue shelters this winter. So just having additional beds will help free up beds in the motels to other people in times of emergency. So as it is, you know, we're going to construction some point this year with the goal of building this or rehabbing this building, completing next summer. But we still have that 5% of funding that we're hoping to raise for the project. That's what we're requesting.
Any questions for Giselle?
Were those numbers county or city?
County.
That's what I thought we said. Thank you.
And Josiah, you're looking at 5 full-time positions for that shelter
Yes.
that would be created?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you so much.
much.
Next, we will be moving into the zone at Northwest Arena, and we will be having Keith and John share their presentation. Thank you.
Chris, is it back to you? Come on in, guys. Take a chair, any chair. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want to sit next to me.
We'll go over there. Pardon my background.
You guys, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I'm Keith Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Northwest Arena.
John Kinder, Program Director of the Zone.
Christy Zabrowski, co-president of the board.
The zone fully encompasses diversity, equity, inclusion, health, and wellness. The zone at Northwest Arena represents a critical next step for Jamestown Center City Development Corporation to continue our mission to serve children throughout their opportunities to inspire themselves, dream, and grow. Providing a much-needed option for a year-round recreational activity and educational programming facility. With us reimagining how we serve youth in our region, our community attraction will generate an economic boost to the city of Jamestown and become a tremendous source of civic pride. The JLDC Selection Committee issued our team the following prompt as a follow-up to the Grant Rubik's scorecard. It asked us to list the negative effects of COVID-19 and how it has affected our project, how the Jamestown community and the disadvantaged youth will benefit from the zone, and what recreational opportunities will it provide. John will give us a little background and then I'll finish up.
So we'll start with that COVID-19 impact. Between 2000 and 2021, our country saw an increase in childhood, adolescent obesity, suicide, and social isolation. We transitioned to a distance learning format that presented many challenges for youth and families. The economic gap for disadvantaged communities grew wider as jobs were cut and resources grew scarce. So that's the human impact. And obviously development stifled for our youth. And the way I view it is us adults are far more resilient and malleable, for lack of better words, than our children are. So there's some reverberations that we look forward to spelling and providing support for those youth that were impacted through the pandemic. In efforts to remain fiscally responsible during those compromising times, we cut out $400,000 worth of digital signage and exhibit attractions that were in our original initial plans. Northwest Arena's $500,000 request from the JLDC Selection Committee would make a significant impact towards project completion, as it represents the increase in project costs from pre to post-COVID. We have experienced a 20+% inflation spike, as well as manufacturing delays that have prolonged our originally anticipated opening. And that also presented challenges in terms of how we framed our marketing, because just simply put, you can only tell people coming soon so many times before you need to draft up a new message. So that presented challenges of its own for our marketing team. Fundraising efforts became extremely difficult as we were unable to solicit and tour potential donors due to the public health risk. At Northwest Arena, we view ourselves as the hub. As the only non-member based recreation and entertainment venue in 3 counties, that being Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny, we have an obligation to serve our community with a custom-made approach. I think what's most exciting about this project, among all the things that are exciting, is that it's so new. We're at ground zero right now, and we can more or less pull DNA in real time from our constituents, from our community members, and really view what their needs are and build in programming and elements that speak to those needs. So that kind of excites me, just being at the ground level. I've been a part of many sports teams, and I've always enjoyed being a part of the teams that necessarily weren't necessarily good, but were a part of a rebuild. And that requires a great deal of leadership, and so that's what excites me very much about being the program director of this project. So I'll segue to the youth community benefit. I view it as a 3-tiered benefit, that being recreational, educational, and social emotional, So the recreational benefit, the zone is a self-sustainable community attraction between the state-of-the-art interactive technology and the variety of attractions offered within the play space. There is something for kids of all ages and ability levels to do. Every square inch of this play space is designed to get kids moving and thinking, all while celebrating the concept of free play. This space will be fully ADA compliant. The educational benefit, through commitments and community collaborations with youth development agencies, academic institutions, and local businesses and organizations, we will institute scholastic opportunities for at-risk kids at little to no cost. In addition, we see opportunities to serve teens and young adults through financial literacy workshops, work readiness programs, career fairs, and much more, both in the zone and throughout Northwest Arena. Social emotional benefit. The zone will be a controlled environment where all guests can feel seen, safe, and secure. We will strive to put programming in place that will aid us in recognizing and supporting the whole child. Youth thrive in spaces where they feel valued and nurtured. Our team looks forward to providing that type of guidance and support for our community's youth. Our staff can also control audio and lighting settings for our sensory challenged patrons. Another very neat feature as far as the technology is concerned. We have already begun implementing a community adult advisory committee to be a sounding board and assist in programming and fundraising. We will also be rolling out youth advisory committee. Positive mental health outcomes drive positive educational outcomes. We know this through countless studies. Chautauqua County, as many of you know, has ranked 6th highest for poverty out of 62 counties in New York State. That is information directly from a U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey from 2022. Recognizing pertinent issues and patterns associated with poverty is essential to our goal of providing the proper support to our community members. 92% of English language learners in Chautauqua County are identified as economically disadvantaged. A great feature within the zone will be the ability for our audio and signage to communicate to our non-English speakers in their native language. Data-informed decision-making will aid us in creating efficient and effective programs. As an organization, we are now officially BOCES certified and can operate as a cooperative service or COSER vendor. In short, we can provide an educational and recreational service to any public school in the state at a fraction of the cost. This state-funded initiative is an amazing tool that allows schools to pursue a shared service throughout the school year with state reimbursement for each visit. Essentially, as a COSER-approved vendor, we have the potential to host every single student in the Jamestown public school system. And then before I allow Keith to close us out, I am a direct result, a direct product of spaces and support systems like the Zone. I wouldn't be standing in this room before you guys if it were not for wonderful support systems and people who have poured into me and mentored me. And I get a little choked up talking about it, but it's what really excites me about leading the charge. I feel super blessed and honored, and yeah, very excited, and I hope you guys will consider that ask in full.
We know what the economic impact that Northwest Arena has on our community. The Zone is going to only add to that. The number of people that are going to be added to our 250,000 door swings every year is going to be added because of the Zone. But let's put that to the side. And I'm going to just talk a little bit in short. Since we've been approved for COSA, the work that John has done to us to be COSA approved, and it's been a short 2 months. We have been contacted and had programming for several of the Jamestown public schools of all ages. We've been contacted and programmed with BOCES, Faulkner, Frewsburg, Dunkirk, Maple Grove, Pine Valley, Randolph Academy, Salamanca, and Southwestern School Districts, all within 2 months, and had programming with them since we've been COSER approved. They know about COSER and what the effects and the benefits that our local kids can have with that being in their pocket to save money for the school systems. If you're unfamiliar with COSER, it is a state-aided program where a school will go through BOCES. BOCES will contact us, and they will get charged for the free lunch percentage. So Jamestown Public Schools is, Tony helped me out, 90-some%. So on $1, it would be, Jamestown Public Schools would be charged, 10 cents on the dollar. The rest of the money would come from the state. So any events that we host through the COSER program, local children will be able to go at a little or reduced rate. And every school system in Chautauqua County and BOCES to
Any public school in New York State.
and there can be cross programming between the counties. So schools from Ithaca, Corning, and across the state can come here at that reduced rate. That being said, we've also had Chautauqua Striders in the last 2 months program. We did STEAM Wars for 15 grade schools. And then we did an athletic symposium for 23 local high school athletic departments. The word is getting out in the school systems that the Zone will be a big part of our children's development. Some of you know me, some of you don't. When I was in college athletics for 31 years, as a coach and administrator, I had this handwritten sign on my wall in my office. It was made by one of my players. It says, everything happens for a reason. And I'm a firm believer of that. We've presented this project to the city before. It just wasn't the right time. We've been fundraising and educating people about the Zone through the tough times of COVID. But we now, since we brought on John and as program director, and you can see his passion and his love for children. We have been approved for the BOCES COSER to allow all children an opportunity to experience the zone through their school systems. These ARPA funds have now become available for projects for nonprofits. This committee has been developed to earmark those funds to give our community and our children an experience like no other, right here in our hometown. This is our moment. This is our time to build something special for our kids. We ask that you be a part and please approve our ask to make this zone a reality. The children of our community have gone through a lot in their young lives. The zone will bring joy and happiness to so many. Let's make this happen at this time. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Questions for the zone?
I see the great progress over there as well. It's nice to see the community buy-in. I do want to thank you guys for posting on social media all the time of the community buy-in in your reach for donations, because that truly shows that community is ready for it too and wants it. So it's nice to see that you're getting community buy-in from local businesses and organizations as well.
Excellent. Any other questions? Great. Thank you guys so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And for our last presentation, I would like to invite Mr. Paul Johnson from St. Luke's.
I think these were not in the packets. So, did you get St. Louis in the packet? Here, go right ahead and I'll.
Pick a seat, any seat. Your choice. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sorry you're at the end. Almost at the
Yeah, I
end.
don't
We got some
even-
other ones right here too.
daunting.
I just-
After hearing everybody's presentation, it is a little bit like, oh, you have one? Okay.
Excellent. If you just want to introduce yourselves and then tell us about your project.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Johnson. I am a resident of Jamestown, live in Ward 4, and I am a parishioner of St. Luke's, where I'm a member of the vestry, which is the church council, and I'm also involved in various parish ministries. And this is Lisa Yagi, who is the warden for administration at St. Luke's, which is the highest elected office in the church. So.
Some say senior warden, but we don't talk about age.
So, St. Luke's Nonprofit Assistance Program application primarily seeks financial hardship assistance in the amount of $200,000 toward restoration and repair of the potentially life-endangering condition of the St. Luke's clock bell tower. The specific financial hardship for which St. Luke's seeks assistance is an unexpected repair cost increase from $1.6 million to $2.5 million as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic that delayed the project, during which delay the cost ballooned. As stated in the first paragraph of Schedule A of our application, the restoration project was always going to be an exceedingly expensive project due to the nature of the required historic preservation work itself, as well as to the technical complexities of accessing the St. Luke's bell tower, complicated by the steep grade of Main Street and the tower's height. Because of these unique factors, our historic preservation architect, Barbara Campagna of New York City and Buffalo, one of the leading historic preservation architects in the country, considers the St. Luke's Tower Repair Project to be one of the most challenging with which she's ever been involved. Just last week, the project contractor and crew began to erect the exterior scaffolding that should be fully in place this week and remain in place for the next 6 to 8 months. The cost of the scaffolding alone is $650,000. An unplanned ancillary expense will be the replacement of part of our Undercroft HVAC installed in 2017 that the contractors late last week needed to demolish to make way for installation of internal support for the external scaffolding. The COVID-induced project delay and associated labor and resource shortages, cost increases, and supply challenges have forced St. Luke's to finance the $1 million project cost increase, the terms being a 15-year variable rate mortgage loan, currently at 6.25%, which will require an annual debt service of $102,000. The ARPA grant would allow us potentially to avoid accessing the full $1 million credit line and help to reduce substantial annually recurring debt servicing costs. The $1 million loan and annual debt servicing will be a real stretch for St. Luke's to shoulder on its own. The situation St. Luke's faces with its bell tower brings to mind the old Jamestown City Hall, built in the 1890s, around the same time as St. Luke's. The old City Hall stood just to the west of this current building on the site of what is now Tracy Plaza, right out there. I recall that in the 1960s, loose bricks or masonry from the City Hall tower fell, hitting and killing a passing pedestrian or motorist. It is to avert a similar tragedy of this magnitude that St. Luke's has no choice but to undertake the costly bell tower restoration work presently getting underway. As a significant contributing property to Jamestown's downtown historic district, St. Luke's and its bell tower are an iconic downtown Jamestown landmark that creates an enchanting, old-world sense of placemaking. With its working full-octave Carolina bells, the St. Luke's bell tower has kept the city running on time as its Westminster chime marks the quarter hours. Bells like St. Luke's are not intended or expected to be heard at a great distance, yet we have known tunes to be readily distinguished under favorable atmospheric conditions as far as 4 miles. There may be conditions at times when they are only heard half a mile away, while the usual range varies from 1 mile to 2.5 miles in any one direction. Having grown up in Jamestown and lived much of my adult life here, it is difficult for me to imagine downtown Jamestown without the St. Luke's bell tower, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Apart from its iconic bell tower, St. Luke's is blessed to be able to offer space and to serve as a central meeting place for the Jamestown community and the surrounding area, as well as for the 2 Episcopal Church dioceses of which St. Luke's is a part. On just about any day of the week, St. Luke's is a hive of activity. Just yesterday, when I arrived for a 4 p.m. meeting, the board of a local charitable agency was meeting in the stage area of our Undercroft. A group of our recently arrived Colombian migrant friends was busy in the kitchen cooking a wonderful dinner to be served at a 7 o'clock Refuge Week movie event to which the community was invited. And when I left my meeting at 5 o'clock, the main hall of the Undercroft was packed with 75 to 100 or more guests for a United Way volunteer recognition program. It's safe to say that this is a typical day in the life of St. Luke's. Apart from serving as a community meeting place, the St. Luke's Church building serves as the hub or base from which our many community outreach ministries operate. Among these are our recovery and workforce development efforts in partnership with the Mental Health Association, enhancing food access in the food deserts of our community through the Jamestown public and mobile markets, and supporting the assimilation process by welcoming new neighbors from around the world to our community as they migrate here or are resettled here by Journey's End Refugee Resettlement Services. St. Luke's even provides office space for the recently opened Journey's End Jamestown Satellite Office, staffed by a full-time employee. The ARPA grant will enable St. Luke's to retain employees as falling stones or masonry from the bell tower or a collapse of the bell tower itself, especially if a casualty or fatality was involved, would financially imperil the parish and likely force St. Luke's to close, thereby putting an end to it and its work. With the assistance provided by the ARPA grant in repairing and stabilizing the bell tower, St. Luke's is excited about an innovative plan to leverage never-before-used space and the bell tower itself, as well as in the boiler room, to install hydroponic growing apparatuses to grow lettuces, kale, chard, microgreens, beans, hot peppers, and even mushrooms. This will enable us to create a year-long growing season for our CSA program that benefits those who are food insecure and suffering from the lasting economic effects of COVID. Expanding this program will allow us to retain the employment of our food access coordinator once the current grant supporting her employment closes. We plan to create several part-time jobs for youth of the community to learn valuable workplace skills and to foster a love of farming within our community. A draft business plan is included in our application materials. In conclusion, Lisa and I thank you for your time, attention, and the opportunity to meet here with you this evening. And all of us at St. Luke's, thank you for your consideration for our application.
Thank you guys so much. Hey. Any questions for St. Luke's? Okay.
No questions? Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
That must mean that's good, I guess.
Yes, it does. Good question.
Thank you.
Okay, any other presentations
That concludes the presentations for tonight.
for the ARPA ones?
Yeah, for the-
Okay,
A couple more.
excellent. We
Bumper done, bumper.
We do have several other folks that are going to present. For the members of the board, is it okay if we hold the meeting minutes, consideration, and financial reports to allow those other folks to present?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So we'll move down to the programming funds. So Crystal, if you wanna
Sure,
introduce
and
us
I'm
as
gonna pass it over to Stephanie.
or Stephanie.
Who is
that works
taking
too.
over this
I am
program.
taking over the fund for downtown programming. So we have here we are. We have, 2 applications here today, and you've received those in your email. And these are both fun, okay? These are great events. We've had one for several years here, being the Scandinavian Folk Festival. And, we'll start with that one first. I'm just gonna give a quick rundown, and then Donald Sandy here is going to share with you, his vision for this year's, festival. And this will be the second year that it's going to be held in downtown at the arena. I kind of questioned that last year, but it turned out to be a huge success.
It sure did.
That was awesome. I think people like the cool environment of the arena. So, you can see this here, I'm looking at the budget page right now, and you can see where this event is a moneymaker to put it on. There is a revenue of a little more than $45,000. However, it also is very, very expensive to put this on. There's the rental cost of the Northwest Arena, and then there's all the lodging for the performers who are going to be here. And they're coming in from all over, from Philadelphia, New York, all over. So, and you can see their professional services, equipment, marketing, and promotion. All of this adds up to just under $53,000. So there is a gap of $7,200, and that's what the grant is being asked for. And I'm gonna let Donald tell you what he's going to do with that $7,200.
Thanks. 100 years ago at this time, Jamestown had the highest percentage of Swedish-born citizens of any city in the United States. And it was the 3rd most popular Swedish immigrant destination after Chicago and the Midwest and so on. You know, it was this area. And in the 1920s, that sort of dropped off. The Swedes weren't leaving the country so much. And, but then settled here, and the furniture industries and so on all became part of this community. The Swedes intermarry, generations have passed. You know, you get to be 2 or 3 generations from your Swedish ancestors, and you lose some of that identity of what it was to be from a Scandinavian country. And so the purpose of the American Scandinavian Heritage Foundation, which is the 501c3 sponsor of the festival is to celebrate and preserve the Scandinavian heritage of the people of Jamestown and as well as the community. It would be my estimate, but I can't prove this, that half of the citizens here still have a sweet ancestor back there someplace, you know, that,
I do.
and, pardon?
I do.
You don't?
I do.
And a lot of them, with the research that's going on with ancestry and genealogy and so on, they have curiosities too about, you know, what is that heritage that I'm from and so on. And so that's what the purpose of the festival is, to help educate and provide an opportunity to celebrate the Scandinavian heritage of this community. As she said, this is our 20th year of doing this, and I realize we're a small potato in this pie here. We asked for 7,000. I'd like to up that to 270,000.
That's why I said, ask for more, get the boat.
We had the boat here last year, and you know, it was parked on Lafayette Street. And all this is free and available to the community. You know, when we start the festival, I'll get back to that. When we start the festival Saturday morning at the Jamestown Public Market, where people are helping to decorate the midsummer pole, and we're asking people to bring in flowers and greens to put on the pole and honor their ancestors. And that will be processed with the Swedish dancers and the musicians along 3rd Street over to the corner of Lafayette and 3rd Street, where we've got a hole in the ground there. We arranged to erect the midsummer pole. It's a 20-foot pole that will be there for the weekend. So all of this is free and open to the public. And once the pole is up, we're dancing in the street on Lafayette Street that's been blocked off, and doing traditional Scandinavian folk dances. Last year, the Viking ship was part of that. This year, we didn't have the money to be able to provide for the ship. And so that's what a big part of this grant is. $5,200 is for bringing the ship back. I have contracts here for the ship and what it costs, which is $2,750. And that's whether it's for here for 3 days or 4 days or and so on. Then the big other cost is lodging, and we've contracted with La Quinta. You know, it's just right across the street, and it's convenient there. We needed to provide 16 nights of lodging for the crew, and that's what brings it up to around the $5,000 range. Because La Quinta gave us a good deal, our cost has come down a little bit, so our total cost is around $4,900. That includes a day of sailing up the Chattacoy and up to the lake too, which is part of the community. One way to cut the cost a little bit is to make it a 3-day thing, not sail, and just have the ship there on the street. And that brings the cost down to $4,418. But I think that adds a lot of community publicity, seeing this Viking ship going up the Chattacoy and also sailing on Chautauqua Lake. The rest of the festival is inside, in the arena. And our goal is to keep it as reasonably priced as possible. So we have just a $5 gate fee for adults, and children under 16 are free. And then inside, there's continuous music the whole time the festival is going. We have a whole series of lectures, including our honorable mayor, who's doing a thing about Swedish mayors of Jamestown. And Paul Leon is doing one that focuses on Mayor Sam Carlson. You know, as you know, started the power plant. And I think people don't recognize how the Swedish heritage impacted the community of today. And we get cheap electricity, but if this hadn't been done by some socialist Swedes back in those days, we wouldn't be here today with lower costs and so on. So there's a series of lectures going on with authors and so on, about the Vikings and so on. We got a lot of crafts, demonstrations, workshops. activities for families and children, and ethnic foods, of course, and bringing in 3 C's is catering, Swedish meatball dinner, Norm Owens' famous core burgers will be served. Last year in 2 days, they sold 700 of them. Now we're thinking there'll be 1,000, so we had to, because we ran out. And our friend at Hotspot Cafe here is gonna do some some Swedish hot dogs. They're called varmkorv. And you put, if you want, a little bit of mashed potatoes across the top of it when you're eating your hot dog. It's a little different. But nobody eats waffles and fika with some sweet goodies, and the arena is selling Danish beer, you know, also. So we're working with the city. I haven't asked them completely yet, but we want the lighting for the city hall to get it blue and green, blue and yellow for the week, and maybe under the Washington Street Bridge too. And we appreciate the support of the city. We appreciate the support of the Northwest Arena. We moved there because we wanted to control the weather. You know, it's not good to have a 2-day festival if it rains, or back in 2019, when it was so blooming hot that the radio was saying, stay inside, don't go outside, you know, which didn't help much. So this helps, and they provide a significant infrastructure support to the event that is making it a lot easier to do. You know, for example, it's harder and harder and harder to get volunteers, and they take up a lot of that slack, you know, with it. So we appreciate them being there and that we can be a part of it. So what we want to do is celebrate the community's heritage. There's 2 parts to this. The Viking ship is around $5,000. The other part is $2,000, just to provide some enhanced publicity. We have a choir from Cleveland wants to come in for about $300. They have costs for their conductor and their musician that plays for them and things like that. So some miscellaneous expenses that would help to further enhance the program. So there's 2 parts to it.
And I asked Donald, I told
Yeah.
Donald, he said that perhaps he didn't need the whole 7,500, and I said,
Right.
no, we will vote on the entire 7,500, you use up to it. And, so, he may come under, but it'll be there for you,
So
after we vote.
the ship is not coming unless we get this money. If you think having a Viking ship parked downtown on the street for the weekend is an enhancement to downtown development, which I think it is, it's a unique special event. I didn't mention that the ship comes with a Viking crew dressed in their Viking garb, and, you know, they're on the boat. You can get on the boat, you can ask questions about Vikings, about the Viking ship and so on. And there'll be some people who can even sail on the ship, you know, as you go up the river and so on. They don't quite sail up, they got a little engine to do it, because there's not much wind to
So it
sail.
goes in the water then.
It's in the water, oh yeah, they're gonna go about, they'll sail when they get up to the lake, of course. We're putting Jamestown on the map as one of the center for celebrating the Scandinavian culture. There's nothing like this between Toronto and Pittsburgh. There's nothing like this between New York City and over into Illinois and Chicago and so on. So we get a number of people that come to it, particularly from Ohio. We're really pushing Warren County in Pennsylvania because there's a lot of Swedes down there in the rural towns, and Sheffield and Kane and so on, to come and be part of our community. Several years ago, we did a zip code study, and we're going to repeat it again this year. And we actually found out that there were people at the festival from 37 different states. Now, I don't believe that they all came here because they wanted to come to the festival. But maybe they're in town, you know, and it's sort of added to what was available here. And it's the place for Jamestown to be this hub of celebrating Scandinavian heritage in this corner of the world. And that is part of our goal, and that has occurred. And people call and ask when it is and so on. So, got people who come and plan their vacations around this and so on. So, we appreciate any support you can provide, and questions.
Thank you.
Uh,
And then we'll take a vote.
So,
Any questions?
I think my family immigrated to Patton,
Patton,
mm-hmm.
never heard of that one.
It's near Altoona,
Altoona,
from Sweden.
was Sweden.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Tyler, we appreciate it.
And typically we take a vote and then go on.
We'll
We're gonna-
just do both.
Okay, we're going to do both. Then our next one, this is a really interesting group called Lunar Pyros. Matt Arnold is here to present. And this was actually brought to us by Dan Stone, so he's familiar with this group. Lunar Pyros is also, now Matt, did you work last year with Mickey Gertz at the Whirly Bird, or is it just this year?
It'll be
So
this year,
this year they're
and
doing an early bird, they're doing 2 nights of the Whirly Bird, and he'll tell you more about what they do. But this is such a easy budget that you can see what we're really looking for is money for insurance for the fire performance, park department staff. This is to be a weekly event, provided that the weather holds up, that it's not too cold, and people won't come out, or that it's raining and that will put the fires out. But they're thinking maybe 11 weeks. So the total cost that they're looking for is $10,200. It will probably be considerably less than that because of our famous weather around here not cooperating. He'll tell you more about props. They need practice props for community training, and that's what this really is a workshop and an event to draw people out into the flow arts. And I got a whole big lesson on that the other day, so thank you, Matt, I really appreciate that. And could you tell us a little bit about your program?
Absolutely, and I don't want you to jinx us with the weather.
I know.
Last year we held this event on private property. We weren't able to, obviously, since it was private property, it was very limited. We weren't able to do the things that we envisioned doing. We didn't get rained out one time last year. They actually have a similar event in Buffalo, New York. It's called the Delaware Park Flow Jam. Every single Monday night, I was there Monday, and last year they got rained out. I think it was like 10 times. Where in 2 days later we were good to go. So we got very lucky with the weather last year. My name is Matthew Arnold. I'm a fire performer from Jamestown, New York. Everybody in the Lunar Pyros, there's 7 of us, is from Jamestown, New York, except for one member is from Wellsville, New York. He drives down here every Wednesday to perform with us. What we envision is I would like to have a community event every Wednesday where we mesh different artists together. So it's not just about fire performers, it's about LED performers in the flow community. If you don't know what flow is, I do have some videos I could show you on my phone. I didn't know what flow was till I seen it, and then I fell in love with it. And I'd like to say the same for the rest of our group members. So it's not only for the LED and fire performers, it's also, we have an invite and scheduled for the 28th, the first week of it. We have hand drummers coming. There is one drum circle that I know